Lots of people construct their levels with the intention of making them look good, but did you know that decoration also plays a vital role in making levels much more fun to explore from a gameplay perspective? For example, consider this level from the game that I'm developing, and by the way, more information about it near the end of the video. But it's just a bunch of walls with basic textures, and exploring around it is quite hard. How do you know whether you've been in a location before or not? Of course, you can try to orient yourself using the actual structure of the level, like if you pass by a corridor, you can use that as a point of reference, but what if there are multiple corridors? Or what if the level is so big that by the time that you return to this corridor, you've forgotten what is around it? Well, decoration can help with exactly that. For example, let's just decorate this corridor that I showed you before, and there we go. Now this corridor has visuals that are not used in the rest of the level, and you just immediately remember where you are when you visit it. If you dot your level with unique set pieces or decoration elements like this, then your level or world is much easier to explore. One game that does this incredibly well is Hollow Knight. Firstly, each area on the map has a unique visual identity because it has a different color profile. So if you're in Green Path, you know that because, well, everything is green. But beyond that, each room in the game has unique visual elements that allow you to place its location, and that just makes exploration way easier. The second thing that Hollow Knight does particularly well is that it makes a point to put super special decorative elements near shortcut points. So if you've been in an area before and you loop back to it through a shortcut, you know exactly where you are because that visual element is super strong. Let me show you another example from my own game. At one point in the ice area, there is this one spot with tons of these glowy blue mushrooms, and they don't appear anywhere else in the level. So you find it, continue exploring, and then you find this switch that opens a door. So you open it, and wait, are those blue mushrooms? In putting this super specific decorative element, it helps the player remember exactly how the level space is constructed, and makes the aha moment way stronger. Have you ever tried to make a level, but you just keep on deleting stuff because you don't really know what to do with it? Well, it's very easy to just go in and make a level by putting a bunch of cool stuff in it, but there is a better way. And so, the best way to make a level efficient to make, but also make it fun for the player, is to give yourself a goal as a designer. Let me explain with an example. In my game's first area, the goal is to introduce the basic mechanics and get the player to the point where they can defeat the first boss. And so, the first boss looks like this, right? In short, to surpass it, it requires you to be able to know how to use your melee attack, your ranged attack, and to be able to dodge around with your dash. If you have these three things, you can defeat the boss. So now that I have an endpoint for what I want the player to achieve, I can construct the level to have them learn this. Usually what I do is I make a sketch like this of what I want the level layout to look like. And then I annotate what each of these points should do in relation to the end goal. So the first thing the player should learn to do is how to attack, right? Pretty basic. Well, point 4 near the start of the level does exactly this, and it does it through putting crates that the player must break. This works great because it really only tests attacking, not dodging or anything. There's no enemy that is, diluting the message. It really focuses on teaching you only how to attack. There are other parts of the level that test the rest, of course, like this part here teaches you how to use your ranged attack, or this one here puts you in an uncomfortable combat situation like the one of the boss. But of course, all of this is in preparation for the boss, so construct your levels with a clear goal, and not only will your levels be better, but they will also be much faster to make because you can just make a list of things and check them off as you implement them. The first game that I ever did real level design for was my first commercial game 5 years ago, and it was called Lootbox Life, and it was a Metroidvania platformer. I think the game had pretty decent level design, but there was one main problem. Everything took so long to make. Now I'm making levels that are way more complicated in my current games, so how am I making them in a fraction of the time, but also making them way more fun? Well, it's by iterating on the design as much as possible, but how do you do that as effectively as possible? Well, to explain, let me first give you an example. The way in which I made Lootbox Life was when I made a level, I picked my tile set and I started drawing around, decorating, and so on, and I dealt with everything at once, so it seems quite standard, right? Well, funnily enough, doing everything at once made the process much slower. The way that I do things now is like this. First, I sketch out the level and I make sure that every bit has an intention, like I explained in my previous tip. But afterwards, I don't just go and make the level according to the sketch, or I guess I do, but I don't do it all at once. So what I do is I make a white box and I follow the sketch that I previously made. So the shapes have to be really basic. I just have to follow the general sketch. After this, I test out the level, and at this point, the level should be fully playable just without any fancy graphics. And this is the most important part. If it doesn't work, either because I feel that the level is not fun or because I've given it to other people to playtest and they don't enjoy it, well, the key in this situation is that I change it. It seems very simple, but there is one key aspect to this approach that works better than my original strategy with the first game, and that is that I have not decorated a single thing or focused on the tiles or anything like that before getting to the point where I change stuff. If you've decorated already and put tons of work into the level, you will be less likely to take on the feedback you receive and change the level to make it better. But if you have put very little work into the level, it will be much faster to change stuff around, and hence you will be much more likely to act on the feedback. So not only does this approach make it faster to iterate, but it makes you more likely to iterate, which only makes your levels better. I remember when I first started getting into game design, there was this one word that always floated around, but I didn't really pay much attention to it because I didn't really get it. And that word was affordances. If you're not familiar with what it means, here is the definition, and in the context of level design, it basically just means how does your game make it clear that an object does a specific thing. Like if you've ever played a game and you see yellow paint on a climbable wall, that's an example of an affordance. The designers thought it was important to make it obvious that this level element is interactable in a certain way. So how can you use this in level design? Well, as I just explained, you can use this as a concept to make a point to create your level elements in such a way that it is easy to know what they do, but I think there's another way in which they can be used. If you sprinkle interactable elements around your level in such a way that wherever the player is, they can see something interactable, you can use those to guide the player how you want. So it's kind of like the coins in Mario games that you have to jump in a certain way to collect them, but on a deeper level. Like for example, my game is an open world in which you can explore around the ocean and there are many different islands, and the way in which I set up the open world is such that there are docks sprinkled around, and these are all entry points to the game's islands, so the players know that they can interact with the docks. But then what I do is I make sure that you can always see at least one other dock, or some sort of element that guides the player in that direction. Lots of people get into game development because there is a story they want to tell, and then the story dictates how the rest of the game works. Unfortunately, games are an interactive medium, and so to make the whole experience as cohesive as possible, the story and the gameplay have to kind of connect in a way. So how do you do this in the context of level design? Well, I think this is a bit controversial, but I think you should not have any story in mind for a level at all if you're really trying to juice up the game's gameplay. In my experience, the best way to make levels is just to make them in accordance with the goals that you've set for the player, and then write a story around all of those once you're done. So let me give you an example. When I was making this ice level for my game, I didn't put any NPCs at all when starting out. Then, once I finished everything and tested it all out, that's when I started implementing them and the story. So what I was able to do is make the NPCs talk about the decorative level elements, and that makes the decorations be even more fresh in the mind of the players. In a way, in using this approach, story and decoration kind of act together to make the level space more explorable. If there's an NPC talking about this obelisk, for example, you're more likely to remember it. Of course, not all games can do this because many really are hinging on their story, but if what makes your game special is mainly the gameplay, then consider laying off of writing your story until the gameplay is all done in a way that allows you to write around it and elevate it. Throughout this video, I've used my game Synthbeast as an example of how I approach level design, and just to give you some more context about what the game is like, it's basically an action RPG where you capture monsters like Pokemon and then use them to unlock secrets and do combat in the open world. If the game interests you, I'm running a Kickstarter next month that will allow you to back for some really cool rewards like creating your own playable monsters, designing your own bosses, or building your own islands. The game is coming to Switch 1, Switch 2, PlayStation, and Xbox, so if the game interests you, follow the Kickstarter link in the description. And anyways, that's it for the video. I'll see y'all next time. Bye.